Thank you, Speaker. I rise to support the petition that has been brought to this Parliament, brought to this House by the member for Port Macquarie. And before I speak to the substance, can I just say what an extraordinary achievement it is for the member for Port Macquarie. He's only been here a short time. 10,000 signatures on a written petition. That is no mean feat. That speaks volumes about the issue. And as the member for Oxley says, all done in the space of 2 weeks. That is a very intense effort and a very intense voice from a community that is clearly very frustrated and concerned about this issue. And I understand it. I think we all have an equivalent of Wrights Road and Lake Road in our electorates. And I know that colloquially in the area it's known as the Wrights Road and Lake Road debacle. I've got my own. If I said Hermitage Road, people would roll their eyes. If I said Anzac Avenue, people would roll their eyes. And I know that the people in Port Macquarie feel the same. In fact, I know this because when I was up there during the by-election, it was the number one issue that people would talk about. As they'd roll into pre-poll, they would say straight up and down, what are you going to do about Wrights Road? And to be able to stand there and say that I'm supporting a candidate that has a plan to get the funding back for this project, that was the information they wanted to hear, and that is why he is here today. But it is important to note that I said get the funding back, because the substance of why this issue has been allowed to go on for as long as it has is because funding that was once there, once allocated to finally fix this terrible traffic intersection, has been taken away by the federal Albanese government. And that is an appalling message to send to a community who had been able, they would have thought, to rely on that investment coming into their community. The reason it's particularly disappointing is because it's also a growth area. Port Macquarie is undergoing a huge influx of new housing. In fact, 14,000 dwellings being built in the immediate precinct of Wrights Road and Lake Road. I can tell you from experience in a metropolitan community, 14,000 homes makes an extraordinary impact on existing infrastructure and particularly roads. Roads are the most vivid example of whether a government is able to deliver for its community, because it's something that people use every single day. They experience that traffic, they experience the emotion and the frustration that comes from it every day, be it on their way to work, be it on their way to visit loved ones, weekend sport, no matter what it is, but particularly in this case, where it is in a health precinct. Because not only do you have the existing through traffic heading up and down the north coast, not only do you have the existing residents that live in the immediate vicinity, not only do you have the comings and goings of the new dwellings that will be coming shortly, but you also have the emergency factor around the hospital precinct. Ambulances coming and going, people visiting sick relatives, those who may be going to see people in their final days. That is the sort of reality that we are talking about for people. So it's all well and good for those opposite to talk about the investments they've made down on the south coast and their stated commitment when it comes to roads and infrastructure. But what they haven't done in their contribution to this petition is put people at the centre of the contributions. And they haven't talked about the real emotional impact that people have when they can't get into the hospital, when they can't get to work on time, when you're a tradie trying to go to your job and you can't get there and you have to tell the client in advance that you're stuck in traffic you can do nothing about. And the worst thing about all of that is that, as has been stated, this has been an ongoing issue for this community for some time. And this isn't to put a political point on it, but you can't deny the fact that funding was there and it was taken away. And that is simply a statement of fact, and that is something that those opposite need to address. They are in government now, they have the capacity and the ability to make the change. And I think that the people of Port Macquarie, the 10,000 people, and I'm sure the more who share this view, but who weren't in a position to add their names to the petition, would expect nothing less from their government. So I look forward to the opportunity to hear from the Minister in reply about the plans, but I just want to come back to this point that in 2 short weeks, a new Member of Parliament has been able to stand up in this chamber and introduce a very significant petition on a very localised issue. For any minister, for any government, for any member to ignore that, I think would speak a lot about where their priorities are, and the priority would clearly not be listening to those people if there isn't something substantive to say today about what they're going to do for that issue. So I wish the member for Port Macquarie all the very best in his continued advocacy. I will be listening eagerly for what those opposite have to say in response. I want to acknowledge the 10,000 people that have signed the petition, and I would urge you to continue to speak about this issue issue with your friends, with your neighbours and with your family, because the more pressure we put on this government, the more chance we have of getting this issue resolved.